Despite setting up a global war between Jumpers and Paladins and leaving key threads unresolved, Jumper 2 never happened. Today, we revisit the 2008 sci-fi action hit that was meant to launch a major franchise. This narrative follows the journey of David Rice, beginning in Ann Arbor, Michigan. As a quiet teenager, David tries to win the heart of his crush, Millie, by giving her a snow globe of the Eiffel Tower. However, a local bully named Mark throws the gift onto a frozen river. When David attempts to retrieve it, the ice breaks and he is swept away by a lethal current. In a moment of pure survival instinct, he discovers he can jump, teleporting instantly into the safety of a local library. This opening sequence establishes the film's central mythology. The power is born from trauma. Rather than returning to his unhappy home and alcoholic father, David chooses to disappear, letting the world believe he drowned. This choice sets the stage for a life defined by escapism rather than responsibility. 8 years pass, and we see an adult David who has turned his miracle into a tool for ultimate hedonism. He lives in a high-end penthouse funded by bank robberies and spends his days surfing in Fiji or resting on the head of the Sphinx. He is the ultimate anti-superhero. While watching a natural disaster on the news, he feels no urge to help, only to continue his life of leisure. This detachment is challenged when he is ambushed by Roland Cox, a leader of the Paladins, a secret society that uses high-voltage cables to trap Jumpers. The introduction of Roland provides the story's ideological core. The Paladins view Jumpers as an affront to nature, believing that only God should have the power to be everywhere. This shift turns a fantasy premise into a global game of cat and mouse. Seeking a connection to his past, David returns to Ann Arbor to find Millie. He invites her on a trip to Rome, trying to maintain the facade of a normal life. However, while exploring the Colosseum, he encounters Griffin, a battle-hardened Jumper who has been fighting the Paladins for years. After a violent skirmish, David is detained by Italian authorities, only to be freed by his long-lost mother, Mary. She warns him that his life is in danger and that he must leave Millie to protect her. This segment highlights the impossibility of David's dual life. By bringing Millie into his world, he has inadvertently painted a target on her back. The revelation of his mother's involvement adds a layer of mystery, suggesting that the war between these two factions is deeply personal and spans generations. David eventually teams up with Griffin, who explains that the Paladins are religious extremists who have spent centuries hunting Jumpers by targeting their loved ones. When David finds his father gravely injured by Roland, the conflict becomes unavoidable. Roland eventually uses a jump scar, the ripple left behind in space, to track David back to Millie's apartment and take her hostage. The tension between the two Jumpers now comes to a head. Griffin is willing to sacrifice Millie to kill Roland with a bomb, but David finally matures, choosing to protect the person he loves over winning the war. They fight across the globe, from the streets of Tokyo to the war zones of Chechnya, until David manages to trap Griffin. In the final showdown, David is pinned down by Roland's electric cables. In a massive display of power, David manages to teleport not just himself, but the entire physical space of the apartment into the river where he first discovered his powers. Now free of the cables, he teleports Millie to safety and strands Roland on a high desert cliff in the Grand Canyon. By choosing to exile Roland rather than kill him, David finally develops a moral compass, separating himself from both the ruthlessness of Griffin and the fanaticism of the Paladins. The story concludes with David visiting his mother one last time. He discovers she has a daughter and learns the painful truth. She is a Paladin herself. She left him years ago because the only other option was to kill him. She grants him a head start before the hunt begins again. David reunites with Millie, and together they jump toward an uncertain future, no longer just running away, but finally moving toward something real.